It's another edition of Time About the Movies, and today we're taking a look at the films of March 21st, 2003, and, looking at this list, the trailers I had to go through, we are in for a doozy, because this was not a very good week for movies. Let's just go ahead and get right to it. Let's start off with the biggest new release of the weekend, and that is the latest Stephen King novel to get an adaptation, and that is Dreamcatcher. Stephen King literally sold the movie rights to this for $1. He had his name all over this. He thinks that this is more worthy of his name being on it than the Stanley Kubrick classic The Shining. Tell me what you think that tells you about Stephen King as a whole. Well, you have 4 childhood friends here, Jonesy, Beaver, Pete, and Henry, all sharing a special secret. Each year they take a trip into the Maine woods. This year is different. A blizzard occurs, and they recover a man found wandering around. Unbeknownst to them, this wandering individual isn't the only being to be found. Now they must act to find the way to stop the outbreak developing and to prevent the world from its doom. Yeah, clearly Stephen King was watching the thing when he was writing this, because this is quite literally a steal of the thing. Like, this is literally the same plot as the thing, but no. We can't make it that's not bad enough on its own. We have to make this plot really stupid on a number of different levels. First of all, Beaver. Like, I know it's a nickname, but Beaver? There's also a guy with the nickname of Duditz. Like that would be bad enough on its own. But no. You want to know how these aliens get inside of you? They crawl up your ass. I'm not even joking. That's literally what they do in this movie. They crawl inside. They crawl inside of your you-know-what, and yeah, that's not scary whatsoever. And neither is Damian Lewis trying so hard to pretend to be threatening, and he's just not. This whole movie is a disaster. With so much talent in front of the camera, Morgan Freeman, who apparently was so important to this movie, he's the only person who has a credit in that trailer you just saw. But you also have Thomas Jane, Damian Lewis, Timothy Olyphant, Jason Lee, Donnie Wahlberg, Tom Sizemore. Respectable names all the way through, but it's Morgan Freeman who gets top billing in that one trailer. But not only that, this is written by Lawrence Kasdan, who also directed this, and William Goldman. William Goldman is the guy who's written stuff like Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, and All the President's Men, and The Princess Bride, and Marathon Man. Great pieces of work and literature. And he's forced to do a movie like this. Lawrence Kasdan has done a ton of classic films. You know, The Big Chill, Silverado, Body Heat, The Accidental Tourist, Wyatt Earp, Grand Canyon. Just so many great movies. This is the guy that wrote Star Wars. Many of the best Star Wars movies. He wrote Raiders of the Lost Ark, Continental Divide. I mean, so much talent all throughout this movie. It's a film that takes place in the snow. It's a thriller that takes place in the snow. I like movies like that. I like mystery movies like this. Suspense films that take place in the snow. Everything that should work about this movie, and it just does not. I mean, my God. If Stephen King's whole point of making this movie is trying to do a film that makes M. Night Shyamalan's Signs look like Close Encounters of the Third Kind, mission accomplished, my friend. You have made Signs look like a much better movie compared to this piece of garbage right here. This is just a travesty of a movie. Just an unholy mess of a film. Which, they tried to trick you to go see it because, hey, let's try to get you in here. Let's put in one of the scenes from the Animatrix, one of the shorts from the Animatrix, Final Flight of the Osiris in front of it. Let's bring those people in there. Like, I mean, it would be a way to bring people into it because the Matrix is still popular. We were still looking forward to those sequels before we eventually got the sequels. We didn't know that the Animatrix was coming out shortly afterwards on DVD. It'd be cool to see it on the big screen, and you know what? That short's pretty awesome. It would have been cool to see it on the big screen. And then people probably would have walked out of the movie theater because this movie is fucking terrible. Like, this is what how people walked out of the trailers after Star Wars Episode 1's trailer came out back in 98 and 99. You had those movies that had people going to see the movie, asking if the trailer was on there, and then just leaving afterwards. Like, I feel like that's what happened with this movie. They played that short, and then people knew exactly what they were heading into and said, let's get the hell out of here. I mean, because at that point you could still ask for your refund back, so no damage done at that point. But Yeah, this is just a piece of shit, man. It's just garbage on so many different levels. Like, so much talent wasted on this movie. And considering the other movies that we have on here that waste a ton of talent, this right here may be the absolute worst one of the bunch. Because the other movies we have here have a lot of talented actors involved in them. But this, the acting is there, the writing is there, the director is there, but they're all put together to make a terrible film in the process. This is easily the worst movie on this show, and trust me, that's saying a lot compared to what we've got coming up next. So why don't we go ahead and move on to that next big disaster of a movie that we have this week, and that is the ensemble film, the comedy A View from the Top. Behold another one of those unmitigated disasters that has the talent involved, but just not anything worthy of value to make it funny. I guess it's called View from the Top. Apparently, if you type a View from the Top on Wikipedia, it gives you an episode of Good Girls, which that makes sense. But you have Gwyneth Paltrow following a young woman from a small town who's Gwyneth Paltrow is the young woman, I should say. She doesn't follow anybody, but she's from a small town who sets out to fulfill her dream of becoming a flight attendant. And you have Christina Applegate, Candice Bergen, Joshua Malina, Mark Ruffalo, Rob Lowe, Mike Myers, and Kelly Preston among the cast in this. Did I also forget to mention that this was a film that was sitting on the shelf for nearly 2 years? Yep, it was one of those movies. It was a film that was originally supposed to come out in Christmas 2001, but because of the September 11th attacks, and there's a story in there that also involves a flight attendant on numerous planes, the release of the film eventually got pushed back, and so yeah, add that to another thing against the movie in general. In fact, Richard Ayoade, who wrote a book about called Ayoade on Top, talked about this particular movie and said that he said that Ayoade argues for the canonization of this brutal masterpiece, a film that celebrates capitalism in all of its victimless glory. One we might imagine Donald Trump himself have watching on his private jet's gold-plated flat screen while his other puffy eyes scans the cabin for fresh young prey. I mean, that's just talk about a review right there, but that just goes to show you how bad this movie is. The trailer can't even decide what type of a movie this is. When I looked this trailer up, it sold itself as a high-air sex romp, it's a sex comedy, even though it's PG-13, because we have to bring the kids into this. But no, when you watch the trailer for this, it just looks like a regular comedy. There's no sex involved. There's nothing about this movie that makes any sense whatsoever. This cast is just completely wasted, and for an hour-and-a-half movie, it drags on. Like, Mike Myers in this movie is so detestable in this. Like, he's bad in The Love Guru, but, man, he is awful in this movie. He's given lines that don't make any sense, that are not funny, but it's okay because he's got weird eyes, like weird goofy eyes, like something out of like Steve Buscemi and Mr. Deeds. But you know what? Steve Buscemi and Mr. Deeds was actually funny in that movie. Mike Myers in this is just not. They don't give him anything funny to do. The whole movie just has such trouble figuring out what kind of a film it wants to be. You should pick what kind of a comedy you want to be. Do you want to be an R-rated sex comedy? Do you want to be this heartwarming PG-13 comedy? It can't decide because it's trying to do both of them, and it just does not work. It's a film that's a sloppy mess, a film that just has nothing of value to it whatsoever. And also does not that you have a director that probably had no idea what the hell he was doing. They got a Brazilian film director, Bruno Barreto, who had been working in the business for 30 years up to this point, and they gave this to a first-time writer, and they basically had to rewrite the script with the director of Just Friends and also College Road Trip, which that should probably tell you everything you need to know there about how this movie ended up working out for them. But yeah, it's just a sloppy mess of a film that has nothing of value to it. It's just a terrible, terrible film. So that's View from the Top. How about we get to probably the best overall movie this week? And even then, it's not great, but it's certainly a lot better than the three films we also have to look at. Let's talk about Piglet's Big Movie. So after the Tigger movie's success 3 years prior, they said, you know what, let's take this other movie that we had originally planned for a video release and blow it up on the big screen. Why not? Worked the first time around. But in Piglet's Big Movie, you have Piglet, being ashamed of being small and wandering off into the 100-acre wood, leaving his friends to form a search party for him. You have 3 flashback sequences that are actually based off the original A.A. Milne storylines the first ones to do that since the Many Adventures of Winnie the Pooh, and even Winnie the Pooh: A Day with Eeyore. And they are modified to make Piglet the hero, to include Tigger and to conform to Disney's version of the characters, but retain much of the original plots from the storylines. And besides the songs by Carly Simon, the Sherman Brothers music is also included here. As I said before, none of the Winnie the Pooh movies that have been released have been bad, but at the same time, most of them have been just kind of okay, mediocre at best, but nothing really that says must-see entertainment in general, except for a couple of movies in particular. But this one's probably the most mediocre one of the bunch that they've done with Pooh and the gang recently. But again, it's not saying it's a bad movie. It's just not really an overly exciting one. It's a movie that's clearly made to entertain little kids. And again, nothing wrong with that whatsoever. I'd rather see little kids enjoying stuff like this than watching other things of like lackluster efforts that are just there to just shut the kids up. Actually have some things about this movie that actually are worth it when it's all said and done. Like, don't dumb down the kids with stupid stuff. Like, this is perfectly fine for them. The movie is essentially very much like The Many Adventures of Winnie the Pooh, where you have all these different stories. And there's no real flowing narrative to it like there was in something like Pooh's Grand Adventure or the Tigger movie. Maybe my overall problem with the movie is that the fact that a lot of the stories don't really connect as well as they do in The Many Adventures. Like, the overall purposes for the events of the film are not really all that thought out. I mean, Piglet wanders off into the 100-acre wood because he doesn't get noticed when he helps his friends out, and that's about it. There's not really a whole lot of adventure potential there. Well, at least in the Tigger movie, there was a bigger storyline centering around Tigger finding his family, and here, the overall premise isn't really that convincing. Even the big action climax they have in here, because, you know, the last one had the big climax at the end of that one, but it's kind of unnecessary and very, very predictable. You got a scene where Pooh and Piglet get stuck on a log over a waterfall, and they do the whole, oh no, we didn't make it in time, when in actuality they actually made it out okay cliche. And I know that for kids, it may seem intense, but for God's sakes, the last movie had them trying to survive a gigantic avalanche. And in Pooh's Grand Adventure, there's a scene where they are trying to hold off from falling off a giant mountain. And those were more intense than what they do here. I actually remember back in the day when, you know, the newspapers had these little columns from people who, you know, write in and all that, and they put them in the paper. There was one person that thought that they literally killed off Pooh and Piglet, and I guess they left before they realized that they do come back in this, because that's what it felt like. It felt like the person who was writing that didn't see the rest of the movie, because, I mean, she literally put it in there like she left after Pooh and Piglet fell off the log in there, and they thought that they were literally dead. It's just like, I mean, it's just, that's one of those things I always remember from reading those old newspapers, and it's just like, I mean, there's nothing really all that great about this movie in general here. I'll give it this, though. The songs themselves are nicely done. I do like that they bring in Carly Simon to do these songs, and I guess they were setting her up to do this long-term thing, because she ends up having more songs in this movie in a number of these films, because, you know, like I said, in A Very, Very Pooh Year, she has a song in there, and then in the Heffalump movie, she has a song there, too. You've got a good score by Carl Johnson, who's a great composer in his own right. The animation is not that great either. This definitely feels like a film that was an ex-DVD, an ex-direct-to-video transplant, like Jungle Book 2 was. But, I mean, it's not as bad as Jungle Book 2, but at the same time, it's not as great as something like the Tigger movie. It's kind of a little in-between. And for the most part, that's what's kind of my feeling about the movie is. It's just an in-between overall. Stupid advertisements. Anyway, like I said, it's just mostly a kind of a generic film, and not really all that investing, because, I mean, it could still be enjoyed mostly by the little kids, and some adults too, if they like seeing these characters and adventures like this, but it certainly isn't the best Winnie the Pooh movie, but it isn't a bad film either by any stretch of the imagination. It's just not one that's clearly a universal appealing film like the other Pooh films were. Like I would say, you know, Christopher Robin, I think, is a film that appeals to many people besides just kids. Pooh's Grand Adventure, the Tigger movie, The Many Adventures of Winnie the Pooh. I mean, Pooh has a lot of great stories to tell that appeal not just to the kid in us, but also to the adult in us as well. And this is just one of those ones where I feel like it's appealing strictly to the kids, and for the kids, I think they get a kick out of it, but for the adults, not so much. So. And now we go to the complete opposite end of the spectrum by moving from a G-rated family film from Disney to our last movie, an R-rated comedy, sex comedy, with Cuba Gooding Jr. and Horatio Sands pretending to be gay on a gay cruise, and it's Boat Trip. How bad could this possibly be? It's pretty bad. So you have Cuba Gooding Jr. and Horatio Sands, who are two best buddies whose love lives have hit rock bottom. Jerry's especially, having just vomited all over his fiancée, played by Vivica A. Fox, on a hot air balloon trip prior to proposing to her. To escape their troubles and find women, they book a trip onto a cruise liner, unaware the travel agent has just played a horror trick on them in retaliation for Nick offending his secret gay lover. And that's the trick. It's a gay cruise liner for gay men to meet and mingle. Slowly but surely, the two men begin to realize this, and in turn, get into a lot of humorous predicaments. Yeah, right. Yeah, this was pretty bad. If Steve Martin had a really good year in 2003, then Cuba Gooding Jr. had one of the worst years of his career. Like, this is the year where his career literally dies in spectacular fashion. Not only because of this movie, but the film that he stars in at the end of the year, too. I mean, where do you even begin with a movie that's this bad? This is an insult to gay people. You have characters that are clearly like, you have characters that are obviously unlikable in so many different ways. And I didn't even get to Nick in general, Horatio Sands' character, who is nothing but a pervert, because he's a janitor, and he works for this massage parlor where he just decides, you know what, there's a naked lady there, I'm going to take my chances and go at him. And then that's literally what happens. You're supposed to like these characters, and like, there's nothing about them whatsoever. They feel like little kids. They feel like little kids who are trying to pretend to be adult. They're like those kids in that episode of Futurama where they go into the internet and they go into the 18+ area, and you see the guards going like, "Oh, you're 18 years old," and you see the kid dressed up in a tuxedo and an adult costume, and like it's just a kid face, like yes, and then the last one's a baby. Like, imagine that, except in real life form. That's these two characters in full, but not a single character in this movie is likable, with the exception of one character that I will get to in a little bit. But Rosalind Sanchez, really gorgeous-looking actress from Rush Hour 2. In here, like, she's supposed to be the voice of reason, but she decides, she's gonna go ahead and sleep with a gay guy and, try to straighten him out. And, like, wow, like, you are such a horrible, horrible person. And, and the gay jokes in this movie are just abysmal. Like, they are just the most obvious. They're the most offensive. There's just some that are just like, why did you even think that was actually funny? And, but on top of that, hey, we've got these bikini models who crashed in and have to go be on this cruise too. And, like, I love how this movie is just forcing the sex comedy in here, because you see these ladies in lingerie. They're working out in lingerie. They're wearing high heels, which, if you're working out and exercising and doing jumping jacks, you cannot do that with high heels. I'm sorry. This is such a stupid film. Is there anything of value to this movie? One thing. There's the one thing in this movie that I have to give Roger Moore a lot of credit for, because Roger Moore, the original James Bond, plays a guy who ends up kind of having a thing with Horatio Sands. And you know what? It's not the best thing ever, but he's the one who's at least giving it his all. He's the one that's at least saying, you know what, this is incredibly stupid, but you know what, I see the potential here. I'm going all in on this bitch. And he just goes all out, and it's just an amazing performance that just carries the film to some level of watchability, because he's really putting his all into this. Like, I give him a lot of credit for putting such effort into this, but the rest of the movie is just terrible. It's just a poorly put together film. Like, it's a film that Cuba Gooding Jr. has no reason to say yes to this. Like, this is a film that he's above. He's an Academy Award winning actor, and he should be in something else that's much better suited for his talents than this piece of garbage right here. And then his next movie is Radio, and well, we'll see how that transpires at the end of the year. But that's bad, but I would say this is worse. This is absolutely worse. This is a terrible film, an unfunny piece of garbage, a homophobic movie, a film that offends gay people in general. It's just so sloppily put together. I can't believe a major studio put this out and thought they were going to make money off of this. It's inexcusable how bad this movie is. This is definitely one of the worst movies of 2003, maybe one of the worst comedies ever made. And trust me, that's saying a lot, because there have been a lot of really bad comedies, and this is right up there with some of the worst, easily. So yeah, I think it's obvious I should say that you should avoid boat trip like the plague. Well, that was certainly a fun way to wrap this week's episode of Time About the Movies up. Will we do better next week? Well, we've got Chris Rock and Bernie Mac at head of state. Okay, there's a possibility there. We have the disaster movie, The Core. Maybe, as long as Roland Emmerich's not involved, has maybe got a chance. And John Travolta and Samuel L. Jackson reuniting for the first time since Pulp Fiction in Basic. So, you're saying there's a chance. We'll see what happens when we meet back here next time. But until then, thank you so much for watching this episode of Time About the Movies. And if you want to see more videos like this, please hit the playlist on the next page. Check out the previous episode. And also don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button if you want to see more videos like this on this channel. So, with that said, I'm off. I will see you guys next time. And until then, as always, take care.